And welcome once again. This is the Studio Take series. I'm Dane Scott. MythBusters continues all this month, and I certainly welcome everybody to come and join. Hi, Pete Ferrand. Good to have you with us here, and everybody else who comes in. We are certainly happy to have you as a part of our groups, the Facebook groups that we feed this to. Actually, simulcast it to multiple Facebook groups, including Rate My Voiceover and the Fiverr VO Enclave, and also the Fiverr and Upwork Voiceover Lounge. So it gets spread around a little bit. It's also on Voiceover Coaching. By the way, if you ever want to check out my page for Voiceover Coaching, that is, I have to stop and think, it's just facebook.com/VO Success. VO Success, not BO Success, VO Success. All right, so we're going to discuss this on a number of different levels, and I think we're going to have some fun with this today. And I certainly welcome your comments. I tend to get a little distracted if I look at the comments too much, so I'll probably do quite a bit of just talking, and I may not address your comments right away, but then I'll glance over to see what some people have to say and address some comments all in one shot, and then go back to my discourse, because otherwise it's like I kind of keep looking over there and maybe reading what people are saying and then forget what I was going to talk about. A little too ADHD for my own good here, I think. So yeah, it's an interesting and a fun topic. Anything about mics. I mean, for me, I love talking about mics. I love playing with mics. I love using mics. There are so many different kinds and so many different approaches and techniques that you can use them for and with. And shock mounts, I've used them and not used them, and we're going to cover some of that. So let's get into it. This shows actually Neumann mic. It might be a TLM 103. Yeah, it is. It actually is. That's the same one that we have right here. I can't lift it up into view right now, and I don't want to make too much noise with the mic and disturb you. So yeah, it's pretty much the same thing as what I have here. I'll turn the camera later and show you my layout in case you're not familiar with it. But this is a typical shock mount. It's got a ring, and it's got some vertical posts, and then between the ring and the posts and some clips are essentially sophisticated rubber bands, just elastic, that holds the thing in a kind of a suspended animation in a way, so that if the mic boom or the mount, the main mount, vibrates or picks up any rumble or any bumping of counters or whatever it is not transmitted to the mic, or at least not as much as it would be if there were not a shock mount. Shock mounts go back pretty much as far as mics go back. Here's an early example of a shock mount, and you can see the same principle kind of applies. There's a ring, there are some clips, but then instead of rubber bands, springs. And you may, if you watch really old movies from the 1920s and 30s, you may see, live music, for example, with the announcer in the front and, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. And he's talking into this thing that looks like a ring with a little hub in the middle of it and spring mounts all the way around. That's kind of the way those things looked back in the early days of microphones. And they've advanced over the years. I'm going to move this one over, get to this one a little bit later. There's another example of the same thing. I may as well cover it while we're looking at it. They form a number of different configurations. This one shows a combination where it actually is not only the shock mount, but also it has a pop filter built onto it. So those kind of things are available. Then there's just a lot of different configurations based on the kind of microphone that you're going to use it with. The shape and size of the mic will dictate to a certain degree the nature of the shock mount itself. And so as we look at some of the other ones here, look at this one. This one apparently is designed for more of the shotgun mic. Yeah, as a matter of fact, if we look right here, there it is. That shows the shotgun mic. So that's why it has such a small hole down the middle to allow the shotgun mic to float in there. Here's another one. This looks kind of like the old Christmas tree stand. You see, it's got the thumb screws on it so that you twist it in to tighten it against the microphone. That might work fine. It just seems like a kind of a scary arrangement if you happen to crimp down a little too hard on it. But there's another approach. And I thought this one was kind of cool here. That's for an AKG, I think, mic. That's what it looks like to me, at least just at first glance. It could be a clone of an AKG mic, but look at what went into this one. And there again, that one's got the clamp-on approach. You see these right here. And there's an inner ring and an outer ring separated by the shock mount bands. And the inner ring is the one that clamps against the microphone. And then this is actually a DIY. Let's see if we can get to that. Okay, this is actually a page where they show how to make one. And it looks to me like it's kind of an interesting, sophisticated arrangement there with a combination of PVC coupling and, oh gosh, I don't want to waste your time with too much of this, but yeah, stove bolts, coping saw frame, and what they end up with is kind of cool looking, actually. But that's a homemade one. Seems like an awful lot of work for a really cheap looking microphone, but that's that one there. And there again, there's another example of one where the pop filter is actually mounted right on. This is the more traditional shock mount with the rubber bands that we're most used to seeing. Here's another one, just a different approach to the shotgun mic. It's got these two smiley face things that just kind of allow it to ride up and down without completely picking up the vibration of the bass at the bottom. And there are many, 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 many more. You know, if you start looking online, you'll see that there's pretty much one for every day of the week and every week of the year. All right. And this one, I'm not sure what to make of that. That almost looks like a makeshift arrangement there with all those rubber bands crisscrossing. All right. The question then is this something you need or something you don't need? And I found a really interesting article on this at Neumann, as a matter of fact. And I'd like to just, with your indulgence, read a little bit of this. Most studio microphones come with a simple swivel stand mount. And at an additional cost, you can purchase an optional shock mount. It's also called a spider mount or an elastic suspension. And this begs the question, do you really need a shock mount? Or is the swivel stand type mount good enough for your needs? And the answer is pretty much the same answer I have. It depends. In general, studio microphones are very sensitive to rumble and vibrations. Other terms are structure-borne noise or impact noise, much more so than stage microphones, and those generally are the dynamic type. That's because studio-quality transducers are designed for extended low-frequency response, and that's where the rumble comes in. But you can only make use of this extended low end if the bass frequencies you want to record aren't drowned in rumble noises. The best way to ensure clean bass is to decouple the mic mechanically via an elastic suspension. Why not use a low-cut filter then, is the next question. If the sound source doesn't contain useful information in the very low frequencies, you could use an electric low-cut filter to get rid of rumble noises. But that only works as long as those rumble noises don't get too loud. If, for instance, the singer accidentally knocks against the mic stand, the resulting vibrations may have so much energy as to overload the mic electronics. A low cut can't handle that, because it's not only the low frequencies that distort, but the entire signal will be clipped, overdriven. A shock mount is much safer because it attenuates impact noises before they reach the mic. Some newer mics, such as the TLM-102, sport an internal shock mount. For example, a capsule mount that is in a shock-absorbent container. This helps to make a clean recording, but an additional external shock mount is much more effective than a built-in one. That takes us right back around to showing us the TLM-103 with the shock mount on it. Now, for your own situation, how do you decide whether you need a shock mount or not? Not everybody needs a shock mount. Let's just start with that. Not everybody needs a shock mount. It depends on your situation and the way your mic is mounted and what your mic is mounted to. Now, let me give you an example of where a shock mount is probably a good idea. Number one, let's say you're in a room where the walls are adjacent to something that causes vibrations, and your mic is mounted to a wall. It's going to pick up some of that vibration, maybe from your furnace or your refrigerator on the other side of the room or something like that. If you have a floor mount mic, with the boom and sitting on the floor. If your floor is picking up vibration from a furnace, an air conditioner, or a refrigerator, that vibration can go up through the floor and can, modulate the stand and the arm and cause a rumble or some vibration there. Another situation that you might run into is, okay, well, let's say that you have a desk mount, a mic desk mount. So it's just a pedestal and a little short stem, and then you've got your mount there for the microphone. If it's on the same surface with you, with what you're working on, and you happen to touch the surface, bump it with your elbow or, bump it with your knee or something like that, boom, you're going to get that effect in the microphone. So a shock mount is going to help some with that. It's not going to be 100%, but it'll help with that for sure. You may have ambient vibrations coming from somewhere else. You have to just kind of take a look at your own situation. If it were a broadcast situation and you were using a mic like that we use in a studio for recording voiceovers, a condenser, a highly sensitive mic, there can be a lot of vibrations in a radio studio, for example, of other equipment, sometimes motorized equipment on the counter or nearby or whatever, and it may be picking up some rumble that way. So there again, a shock mount is probably a good plan. If your mic is mounted to a surface that is not prone to vibration, then the situation changes. Unless you're someone that's constantly, messing with your mic. But who would do that? When you're doing a voiceover, the last thing you should do is touch your mic, right? So your mic is being left alone. It's not being manipulated by you, hopefully. Ideally, it's not mounted to the same counter surface that you're sitting at or standing at. It's mounted separately. It's isolated. So that isolation, unless there's vibration being picked up from elsewhere, is enough to protect you against having any kind of rumble coming into the microphone from the outside. So with that said, and I'm not seeing anybody commenting, I'm not seeing people joining, so I don't know if we've got people here or not, but I'll try to kind of keep an eye on it. Sometimes I don't trust what I'm seeing here in the little Facebook window, as to whether it's reporting correctly what's going on. So, getting back to it, if your mic is mounted to a surface that is not prone to vibration, it's not picking up vibration from somewhere, there's a good chance that you may not need a shock mount. Shock mounts have some inherent disadvantages. For one thing, it's something that gets in the way. It actually has. Let me move this over a little bit. It has a visual footprint. It's going to be bigger around the microphone than the microphone itself. So depending on where your mic is positioned, a shock mount actually can kind of get in the way of your field of vision. Another thing that can happen with shock mounts is, let's say that in the process of moving your mic around while you've got the shock mount on there, maybe you're grabbing it by the shock mount ring or somehow else, it's possible for you to accidentally knock those little rubber bands out of their clips. And if that happens, all bets are off, bro. Unless you're a little on the clever side, with some of these sophisticated shock mounts, it's an absolute spider web. And it takes a little time and figuring to get things hooked back together the way it was. Now, I'm not real technically astute, so it's easy. I was never good with Legos and Tinker Toys and things. So, once those things kind of come apart, it's like I have a little bit of a panicky feeling like, uh-oh, am I going to be able to get this back together? So you can tell I've used shock mounts. It's not like I'm totally unfamiliar with their use. And actually, when I got this microphone, I definitely had purchased a shock mount for it and had that on there. But similar to the situation with pop filters, at one point I just thought, it's kind of in the way. It's a little awkward. And it does tend to kind of unravel on you if you're not careful with it. Maybe I'll just try it without it. So I took it off of there and I just, put the standard mount on there and just clamped it on hard, so it's actually making good, solid physical connection with the boom. And lo and behold, for my own situation, it really was not necessary. And so, this is not to say that your situation is going to be the same. But let me just tell you how I'm set up. I'm going to try and show you this. I don't know if it's going to be possible to see. And actually, in my little view, I can't tell if I'm showing you the right thing or not. But the boom, the mic boom, goes back to the bookshelves back here. Yeah, I think you can kind of see that. Yeah, I think you can kind of make that out. I'm not sure, but it actually, the boom is mounted to the bookshelves over at the wall. So it's not mounted to the countertop. And the result of that is that it's completely isolated from my work area. And if I tap on the counter or bump it with my knee or whatever, it's going to take a lot for that to transmit over through the floor, up the wall, into the bookshelf, up the boom, and into the microphone. It's just not going to be likely to happen. Hello, Mark and Pete. Welcome. And Angela, good to have you here too. Thanks for your comment on the recording space. Glad to see you're here and watching and listening. And also to Pete for your comments on shock mounts. So, good to have some people on board. Again, and Angela, let me just mention that I will be doing a kind of a tour coming up in a future session, sometime after October when we're done with the MythBusters thing. I'll take you on a little tour of the studio and kind of show you things all around. Get this back on me now because I think I've kind of shown you what I need to show you. But let me just talk just very quickly about the way I'm set up here with the boom and how I arrived at that. Back in the 1990s, don't laugh, I heard an interview with Pat Boone, the singer and actor, and he talked about his studio setup. He had a home studio, and he said what he did was he got the boom arm type thing, and he said he mounted it over on the side, and where the pedestal is that the boom mounts onto, it swivels on there, so it can go from side to side like this. Sorry for the banging here. And it also can be swung out of the way. Now I am going to bang, so forgive this, but I want to just show you what I'm going to do here. So there's my computer monitor, and what I tend to do is when I'm not using the mic, rather than having it down here in front of me, I bring it up and over the top of the monitor, and then my workspace here is completely clear. And then when I want to work, pardon again the rumble, I just lift it down, back into place, and then I'm ready to go. Depending on how you're set up. If I didn't have a monitor here, instead of lifting it over the top and just setting it on the monitor, I would just swing it to the side. And this is what Pat Boone had said that he does, when he's not using the mic or when he doesn't need it in front of him. The beauty of a mic arm like that is, whoosh, you just swing it out of the way, out of sight, out of mind until you need it again. As it turns out, because I'm working all day in front of the mic, about the only time that I do that is at the end of the day when I want to just move it out of the way so it's easy getting in and out of my little cubby hole here. So there we go. That in itself, actually, if you take anything from today, that's one of the things that really, really has helped me over the years. I actually, after hearing that, went and bought a good heavy-duty mic boom arm, scissor arm they call it, and started using that, and it was just like, this is brilliant. I love this. The only thing is, if you mount your mic boom arm to the same surface you're working on, if you bump the counter or scratch the surface with your fingers or whatever it is, a certain amount of that's going to get up the arm and into the mic. So again, if you are in a situation where there's the potential for you to pick up rumble, sympathetic vibrations coming up through whatever surface the mic is mounted to, then a shock mount is a good idea. If you have a situation like mine where you have a good solid surface you can mount your mic boom or mic arm or whatever you're going to use to, that does not directly associate with the working surface, the counter or whatever it is that you're at, then a shock mount is probably not something that you'll necessarily need. So there we go. Kind of a myth buster today. It's a myth buster that everybody needs to use a shock mount. That is not true, but you have to kind of take a look at your own situation. So that is today's MythBuster, and we'll be back with one on, this is Wednesday, on Thursday, 11 a.m. Central Time. If you are thinking about buying equipment, this is my parting thought for today, and I'm going to preach this occasionally during the month. If you're thinking about buying equipment and investing in doing voiceovers, before you do that, find out for yourself whether it's worth your while. I am contacted so frequently by people who send me personal messages, and they say, I'm thinking about getting into voiceovers. I've purchased X mic, and I've purchased this Scarlett box, and I've gotten Adobe Audition, so I'm feeling like I'm getting pretty ready to start on this now. What do I need to do to get started? And I just feel bad for them, because that's not where you start. Where you start is by learning the ropes, becoming familiar with doing voiceovers, developing your skills, becoming good at what you do, having a craft, having an art, and getting, I don't say you have to get coaching, but you should at least get feedback. That Rate My Voiceover group that I started, that's kind of the purpose of that group. But if you want to work one-on-one with someone to get a feel for where you're at, invest a little bit in a coach, anybody you trust. I do it. I'd be happy to get with you on this and kind of baseline you where you are. And yeah, definitely get with somebody and get some help. If you'd like to personal message me, it's $50. We do a 1-hour session, and we can go through it and give you a really good sense of where you're at. And I'll be honest with you whether I think you've got some potential or not. And I won't string you along. If I feel like maybe this isn't for you, I'll tell you that. So with that warning that could be an outcome, feel free to contact me, personal message me through Facebook, and we can get together on that. Also, voiceover coaching for anybody that's kind of working their way along and would like to get some feedback. Again, I'm available for that as well. So that is going to be it for today. And again, we will be back tomorrow. I'm just looking to see if there are any more comments here. Angela says, I might be the odd man, but I found my shock mount to help. However small, I find it does help reduce vibration. Maybe my arm is garbage. Yeah, again, it just really depends on your situation, whatever you've got going on. I use floor stands, seems to work best on a concrete carpeted floor. Yeah, I suppose as long a floor stand definitely needs to have a good, solid, stable underlayment. If it's on too much a cushy carpet, it'll tend to kind of rock around. But as long as it's on, say, some for example, if your carpeting was what do they call that? Like they put in football fields, the outside carpeting. Something that's low pile, shag. I mean, it would just go riding around on that. But as long as it's something that's fairly low pile, it probably could be done. And you could also even create a base to go under your base. If you do whatever you need to do. That's the whole deal with voiceovers. You do what you need to do. Also, thanks for busting the myth from Mark. Thank you for that comment. I sincerely wish that Facebook would allow me to scroll these messages, but I can only see like the last 3 or 4 messages here. So for anybody else who commented, apologies that I didn't see and respond to what you had. Thanks, Angela, for your comment on the voice. That's why I go by golden tones. I don't have a lot of harmonics in my voice. It tends to be more smooth, and so it's kind of appropriate for the soothing type voiceovers. I assume you're kind of the same way, Angela, because of all of like the meditation type voiceovers that you do and so on. And I see that you're doing great with that. Excellent. Thanks, gang. Nice to be with you today, and we will do this again at 11 o'clock tomorrow, Thursday, the 8th of October. Until then, this is Dane Scott. Thanks for watching.